All right, welcome back, folks. In the last section of our notes from Unit 5 on Heredity, which goes along with Part 3 uh, PowerPoint on Classroom, we're going to cover 5.5, the environmental effects on phenotype, and 5.6. Right now, let's take a look at the environmental effects on phenotype. So, nature and nurture. The environmental impact on phenotype, in other words, phenotypic plasticity. Anytime you talk about plasticity, it means the ability to bend or change, right, or to morph. So another departure from Mendelian genetics arises when the phenotype for a character depends on the environment as well as the genotype. Obviously, your genotype is going to give you, certain parameters in which you can develop, but you can develop differently depending on the environment and how that environment influences it. Okay? So the phenotypic range is broadest for polygenic characters. So polygenetic, remember, are characters where you have many genes that affect it, like skin color, right? You have multiple genes that affect your skin tone, which is why we have such a broad array of skin tone. Though that's a bad example for this because that's really not environmentally dependent. But generally speaking, that is the case. Traits that depend on multiple genes combined with environmental influence are called multifactorial, meaning there's many factors that can affect how they show up. So here with these two flower types, they will show different colors depending on whether the soil is more acidic or more basic, which is pretty cool. And gardeners use that all the time to adjust the colors of the flowers. If they're getting color they don't want, particularly this type of flower, they can make the soil a little more acidic or a little more basic, and they'll get the color change. Um, let's see some other examples. Um, Less obvious ones, like you get a genotype or a number of genotypes. It's polygenic that determine your height, but that's just your height potential. Different um, diet and exercise and things like that over your growing years will affect how tall you can grow. If you got a really good diet and you're getting good solid exercise and things like that, you're probably going to max out your height potential. Whereas if you're not getting the nutrients you need to grow to your full potential, even though you got the genes that say you could be 6'3", you might only wind up being 6'1". Okay, so it's another type of environmental influence on how your genes are expressed. Here, we've got a really cool thing with Himalayan rabbits. Um, so what you got here is a Himalayan rabbit. If you put cold pack right here, it'll turn black. So they show the gene expression in an organism could be modified by interactions in the environment. So the experiment was they put fur plucked from a patch on the back, then they put a cold patch on there, applied to the area. New fur that grew under the artificially low temperature is black, and the enzyme encoded by the gene is active only at low temperatures. So the thing you see here, you notice how this rabbit, where the black was before, tail, feet, ears, and snout, those are the areas that are colder on the rabbit. This core area stayed warmer, so it stayed white, whereas these areas were more exposed, had less blood flow, were colder, so the black gene expressed there, but not here until they did this. So with that type of rabbit, you could actually get it to grow some funky patterns in its fur if you wanted to do that. I don't know if anybody's ever done it, but I think theoretically that could happen. All right. And lastly, just kind of we've been talking about chromosomal inheritance, just kind of summing it all up here. It all comes down to this: the genes and alleles you get are based on how they got to you, which is via meiosis, the chromosomes, the genes and alleles on those chromosomes, the crossing over, the fertilization, all that stuff. So, if you have alterations of chromosome number or structure, they can cause genetic disorders. Large scale chromosomal alterations in humans and other mammals often lead to spontaneous abortions or miscarriages or cause a variety of developmental disorders. So, major problems happen way more often than we realize um, in this process. Mistakes are going to get made, but generally, those mistakes are so catastrophic that the cells just aren't going to be able to even, maybe sometimes even implant in the uterine lining or develop very far at all. So, a lot of times, females will have a fertilized egg, but they'll never get pregnant, and they won't realize they were pregnant because the developing zygote and blastocyst and all those things that are coming later, at some point, it just can't go. It doesn't have the right number and types of genes to form a fully functioning organism, and they have a spontaneous miscarriage. Often females will just get a slightly heavier than normal, slightly later than normal menstrual flow when that happens. So it happens more often than people realize. Plants tend to tolerate such changes better than animals do. I don't know why. I haven't had the time to research it yet after I read that one. If you know, let me know. Abnormal chromosome number. In non-disjunction, pairs of homologous chromosomes, normally the homologous chromosomes come together, right, during meiosis prophase 1, and then they get split. Well, what happens, instead of getting split, they both go to one side. So one set is going to have an extra pair, and the other set going through meiosis is going to have none of that particular chromosome. All right. So what happens then? Bad. So here we can see that non-disjunction. Here's normal on this side. Here's what happens with the non-disjunction. Okay. So over here, developing normally. On this one, over here, this looks okay, but this is awful. Okay, well, this has got an extra one, and this is missing it. So here, we've got an extra chromosome that we should have, an extra chromosome. We're missing it, so half of them got an extra, half of them are missing it. Over here, extra and a half. This is the only one that didn't go through any non-disjunctions and winds up correctly. So depending on which one of these actually develops, you're either going to have not enough chromosomes or too many chromosomes. All right, so aneuploidy results from the fertilization of gametes in which non-disjunction occurred. So if that happens and it gets fertilized, it's an aneuploidy. Offspring with this condition have an abnormal number of a particular chromosome. A monosomic zygote has only one copy. Okay, a trisomic, I want to say trisomatic zygote has 3 copies. So you get one or the other, right? You don't get the one you don't get this, you get this. Polyploidy is a condition in which an organism has more than 2 complete sets of chromosomes. Okay, triploidy is 3N, tetraploidy is 4N. It's fairly common in plants, but not animals. And polyploids are more normal in appearance than aneuploids. They have enough genes, they just got too much of whatever proteins that is. Whereas if you're an aneuploid, we only have one, you're not able to make enough of that protein, and it's usually more devastating. We can also have alterations in chromosome structure, which can lead to 4 types of changes. We can have a deletion, where you remove a whole chunk of the chromosome segment and you're missing genes. Duplication, where you get extra, so it's almost like polyploidy and for just a small part of a chromosome instead of the whole one. Inversion, where you flip over part of the chromosome. Or translocation, where you move a segment from one chromosome, not just to, like crossing over, but to a whole nother chromosome. So from chromosome 1 to chromosome 15, maybe. So here we can see that. Here's deletion. Here's an inversion, where we flip it upside or over. A duplication, where we get an extra chunk of this. Or translocation, where we go to a whole nother chromosome. Some human disorders that happen because of that. We have some types of aneuploidy appear to upset the genetic balance less than others. All depends on what genes they're affecting, resulting in individuals surviving to birth and beyond. These surviving individuals have a set of symptoms or a syndrome characteristic of that type. One of the ones that people are most familiar with is Down syndrome, or trisomy 21, where you have an extra 21st chromosome. Affects about 1 out of every 700 children in the United States. It does increase as the mother ages. We're not sure exactly what causes that, other than the fact that obviously non-junctions appears to be more common as women age, when they're producing the final stage of making their eggs. Why that's the case, we don't know. If you have aneuploidy of sex chromosomes, it can produce a variety of conditions. Triple X females are healthy with no unusual physical features. They're good because remember, we got bar bodies going on too. Kleinfelter syndrome is a result of an extra chromosome in a male producing XXY. And then monosomy X, called Turner syndrome, produces X0 female, so individuals with one X, who are sterile. It is the only known viable monosomy in humans. It's not surprising that it's viable, because in humans, one of the X's always turns into a bar body anyway in cells. So, yeah. The syndrome, and I can't, cry du chat, I can't pronounce it, cry of the cat, results from a specific deletion on chromosome 5. If a child's born with that syndrome, they're severely intellectually disabled and have a cat-like cry, and they usually die in infancy or early childhood. Certain cancers, like CML, are caused by translocations, where we're flipping from one chromosome to another. So just kind of summarize this, guys, this chromosomal inheritance theory. Segregation, independent assortment of chromosomes, and fertilization result in genetic variation. That chromosomal basis of inheritance provides an understanding, not an understanding of the pattern of transmission of genes from parent to offspring. And certain human genetic disorders can be attributed to the inheritance of a single affected or mutated allele or specific chromosomal changes, such as non-disjunction. And this is going to play a role in evolution, which we'll talk about later. Have a good one, guys. Bye.